We're still having rounds whiz past our head the whole time. And my lieutenant looks at me and he goes, Jones, I can't get a hold of any of the trucks. You're going to have to make a run and go flag the trucks down. I start running the 100 yards towards the trucks. The whole time, rounds are just bouncing down by my feet. And I finally get to the attention of the trucks. And I'm out in the middle of the open desert. And I'm going, shit, I ain't got no cover. I ain't got no place to hide. Well, fuck it. I got a flak jacket on with sappy plates. They're designed for a reason. So I just took a knee and faced right at the guys who were shooting at us and just started shooting back while I was waiting for the trucks to get in front of me so we can medevac Kerma.
Training is a way of honing skills, of teaching your body to think without you so that you can concentrate on the crisis at hand. But you can't train character. You can only amplify it. Of course, character can be kind of a slippery concept. We often think it has to do with being honest or forthright. We think of people as having a strong or a weak character, and from there, we get a sense who they are in the big picture. Character, however, is a composite. It is made up of the different ways we live up to the commitments we set for ourselves. For Cody Jones, the commitment he made to himself was part of a larger perspective, a way of lining up the world so that it made sense easily and immediately. When you give yourself a couple of basic rules, but then live up to them without fail, that is what makes you reliable. And at the top of Cody's list was an injunction that doing things right was more important than anything else.
Well, at that point, I'm sitting here going, I was like, just take the leg, doc. I was like, with prosthetics, I'll be able to do everything I was able to do before. I mean, some things will change, but there ain't no point in me being in pain the rest of my life. Just take the leg.
What is true bravery? What makes a hero a hero? Tested by the worries of what's happening at home, thousands of miles away, and the reality of what you're facing here and now. When your life is in danger every second, and it's either kill or be killed. From Wondery and Incongruity Media, this is Anthony Russo, and this is War.
When you're looking to hire someone, there's nothing more tedious than going through dozens of emails, reading resumes that just don't fit. And sometimes you do find a candidate and only discover that they're wrong for the job, or that it took you too long to get to their resume and they found other work. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. With results like that, it's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is the highest rated hiring site in America. And right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. That's ZipRecruiter.com/THISISWAR. ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
The Marine recruiter who enlisted Cody Jones said he had never had an easier job getting parents to sign for a 17-year-old recruit. Cody's great-grandfather had served in World War II, and his grandfather had been a Marine. His father was in the Navy, and various of his great-uncles had served as well. His was a military family, and he wasn't going to be the one to break the line. His folks signed pretty much just to save him the trouble of having to do it himself when he was 18. In fact, the recruiter asked him to stop shaving his head that summer so he would have some hair left for them to cut when he got to MCRD San Diego, which is just what he did.
Boot camp was the easiest thing I ever did in the Marine Corps. It was a cakewalk. At the time, it was one of those things, you felt like it was the most difficult thing there was. It sucked, but it was mainly just mind games. I mean, it was physical, but it wasn't as physical as you kind of expected. It was mainly just fuck games. Go over here, come here, do this, do that. And nope, who told you to do that? Get back over there. Outside of that, it was a matter of, okay, they're getting us to where we're listening and doing what they want us to do regardless of what it is.
Unfortunately for Cody, what they wanted him to do was to become part of the Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team Company, acronym FAST Company. His recruiter had assured him that the Marines weren't taking any more infantry enlistees when he signed up, and in his enthusiasm, Cody accepted this security MOS, hoping he still might have a chance to get into combat before there were no wars left to fight. As he finished his training at the School of Infantry in 2009, the drawdown in Iraq was already underway, and the Marines were transitioning to a new, post-war terror stance. Fast company training was fun. They were responsible for, say, evacuating besieged embassies and clearing pirated ships. But in practice, it ended up being guard duty, watching the comings and goings near the base at Guantanamo Bay, protecting a nuclear sub at port, and training for embassy and ship extractions that were never going to materialize for him. Cody, and a lot of the other Marines he served with, wanted to do so much more.
Well, when we finished up the training for security forces, I knew I was going to Fast Company, and then from there, it was a matter of going to whatever fleet unit I get assigned. And the whole time I was in Fast Company. I mean, when I deployed to Cuba, when we went to Spain, the whole time we're sitting here hearing about and talking to some of our buddies who are in the fleet who have already been to Afghanistan and already doing it, and we're like, oh man, we just can't wait to get out there and get some, because I mean, this is what we signed up for. We're a bunch of guys who wanted to do infantry. Some of us got swindled out of it from our recruiters, but I mean, that's mainly what we wanted to do, and we're just waiting to get and doing it.
If there was an upside, it was that he had connected with Alexis, the woman who would marry, and he was cultivating a relationship with her. Alexis was a buddy's sister, so she had a better-than-average sense of what was caught up in being family to a Marine. Cody eventually made his way to a duty station in Virginia, and he would fly her out occasionally, but in retrospect, it was almost as if they were training to be a couple separated by miles and responsibility. By the time they got married in March of 2011, they had spent hours together on the phone and online, really trying to get a sense of one another. They wanted to have a marriage that would work.
For me, it wasn't too bad. For her, it was a little rough at first because she left Florida to stay with my parents in Texas. And when she got there, she got to the small little town I grew up in, and she's going, these people are going to kill me. What am I doing? Because she's from a big city in Florida. She's from Jacksonville. She wasn't expecting a small little town in Texas. 2 days after we got married, I went out to 29 Palms, checked into 27, started doing training, and about a month later, she packed up everything from Texas and drove out to California. And
Cody's unit was part of the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, stationed at 29 Palms. It was a great assignment for him because he was finally going to get his chance at combat. Cody felt like he had a purpose as a Marine, and he got a particular satisfaction setting an example and leading as the opportunity presented itself. He wasn't fearless, but he did have a confidence that superseded fear. It wasn't self-confidence, but rather a belief in the process and in the system. A belief in the power of living up to your responsibilities. That if you did your duty without question every time you were asked, the outcome was almost always going to be secondary. And so, as his deployment date neared, the only thing that really weighed on Cody was that it was unlikely he would get to be home when his son was born.
And so we found out she was pregnant right before I deployed. And then from there, it was, okay, now I'm deploying and my wife is pregnant and I got to leave and she's stuck back here. We spent a couple hours before we had to get on the buses with family and friends. And then my parents came out from Texas because my wife was going back home with them. So they came out and said goodbyes and then got in formation, got everything ready. We were able to say goodbye one more time. And then from there it was, okay, got to get on the bus. And now it's time to go. And it's at that moment that you start switching your brain over from, okay, I'm going to miss my family, but now I got to get focused and get my mind on the ball and get ready to go.
And so Cody put his faith in his training and his God, and he set his mind to the task at hand. By 2012, the mission in Afghanistan still focused on hunting and capturing Taliban fighters and officials, as well as continuing the Afghan National Security Forces training. He'd been following the news about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan closely since he was in high school. He'd heard stories from buddies who'd served in both places and felt like he had a really good sense of what it was going to be like. Still, nothing can quite prepare you for the realities not only of the violence in the war in Afghanistan, but also for the bleak landscape and the desperate poverty that comes with it. A lot of U.S. service people tend to find culture shock in the little things. For the duration of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, so far we all have seen the violence and the fighting, the aftermath and explosions in the crowded marketplaces, photos of forward operating bases where U.S. forces live a very different life, one without, say, running water or reliable internet.
But the divide between what you expect and what you experience exists in the day-to-day for U.S. forces abroad. For their part, they've been trained to do without and to process confusion, danger, and violence before the first time they ever set foot in the desert. What is always new and surprising, though, is witnessing how the locals go about their day-to-day and the reality of life in Afghanistan.
I kind of expect it to be kind of like a ghetto of Dallas or something where you got some rundown areas, but it's still somewhat decent. And you land and you're like, holy shit, we're in the middle of the desert and there's absolutely nothing here. These people are living in mud huts with one generator to pump their water for their crops and for them to use to wash themselves with, and that's it. And the only piece of furniture in their house is a small little coffee table that they use to eat at. So, I mean, it really puts life in perspective as far as what people say when they mean dirt poor. I mean, these people are literally dirt poor. They're living in a dirt house.
Adjusting to a culture that has already adjusted to war is another singular experience for members of the U.S. military, especially on their initial combat tour. When one platoon relieves another, there's a transition process, sometimes called left seat, right seat, and other times called RIP, for relief in place. The relieving unit replaces the unit to be relieved a few people at a time, with those who are used to serving in the area acting as kind of a war tour guide on patrols. The transitions tend to be less eventful as the enemy waits for it to be complete before testing out the relief troops for weaknesses. By the time Cody Jones landed in Camp Leatherneck, the war in Afghanistan was more than a decade old, meaning that most of the Afghan children did not know a world without U.S. troops on patrol. When you come up like that, the kind of trouble you get into as a kid is significantly different than the trouble kids in other countries not at war get into. But the means of troublemaking are still the same. Afghan kids would toss rocks down at the Marines on patrol, mostly hitting the vehicles, but occasionally dinging the gunner. Still, the Marines had been good-natured about it until they got word that, along some sections of highway, it wasn't all fun and games.
Well, one day, instead of a rock, they threw a grenade. So once we got word about that, one of my buddies, his dad owns a bunch of golf courses, had golf balls shipped to us, and another buddy had his mom send a bunch of wrist rockets. So every turret gunner had a box of golf balls and a slingshot. So the next time those kids started throwing rocks at us, instead of letting them just throw rocks at the turret gunners would grab that slingshot and a golf ball and start shooting golf balls at those little sons of bitches. For us, it's like, okay, they're just kids being kids, but now we know they're throwing grenades, so we ain't getting hit with a grenade just because some kid wants to have fun.
Driving around on patrol was one thing, but the Marines weren't just in the area as a show of force and protection. They were hunting members of the Taliban. This meant foot patrols through villages, and the foot patrols could be a lot more dangerous than driving IED-laden desert roads and highways. But the Taliban fighters and leadership often weren't on the roads. They were holed up in small villages and homes, which left people in the middle compelled to choose between two armed forces. The Americans, who were present and visible, and the Taliban, who lurked and sought retribution. It made for tense moments and conversations whenever the two were in close enough proximity to one another, charging the air with a tension that everyone could feel, but no one could name.
We went out to a little town near called Abiabad. It's a small little village, and we get there. We parked the trucks about 1,000 meters back, and the whole time we're patrolling, we're sitting there. Any Taliban, asking them what kind of Taliban interactions they have. Oh, no Taliban, no Taliban. Okay, fool. Either you people are lying to us or there's something else going on, because you just have this feeling the whole time. These people aren't telling us the truth. They're a bunch of fucking liars. Something else is going on.
By this time, the Marines had been walking around for a while, circling the village and checking in with home after home, and with each check, things got a little more tense. But sometimes it was just a tension that they felt, and it was a tension without consequence. When you're standing outside of someone's home with guns, even though you don't mean them any harm, sometimes their fear comes from a perceived threat, and sometimes it comes from a legitimate one. And the only way to find out is the hard way.
Well, we get to the last house, and we're about 150 yards away from our trucks, and the guy comes out and brings out chai tea and crackers and stuff, and he's sitting there talking to our lieutenant and our interpreter, and we're doing a short security halt, making sure no one's fixing to do anything. Well, the instant the Afghani gets done talking and they get done drinking their Thai tea and everything, and he starts walking into his house, we instantly start taking fire. And within the first couple rounds that were shot towards us and at us, one of the Marines, Herma, he ended up getting shot. So as that's going on, we're returning fire. Miller's providing first aid to Herma to get the bleeding to stop and put pressure bandage on him. And my LT's trying to get on the radio to get a hold of the truck so that we can get them to block us while we could get Herma loaded up and then get out of there and get a medevac. Well, we're still having rounds whiz past our head the whole time. And my lieutenant looks at me and he goes, "Jones, I can't get a hold of any of the trucks. You're going to have to make a run and go flag the trucks down." I was like, "All right, roger that, sir." So I stand up. I start running the 100 yards towards the trucks. The whole time, rounds are just bouncing down by my feet. And I finally get to the attention of the trucks. They start moving to go block in front of and get in front of everyone so we can get loaded up, get Herma up, and then do this medevac. And once I finally get a load of the trucks, I'm out in the middle of the open desert and I'm going, shit, I ain't got no cover, no concealment, I ain't got no place to hide. Well, fuck it, I got a flak jacket on with sappy plates. They're designed for a reason. So I just took a knee and faced right at the guys who were shooting at us and just started shooting back while I was waiting for the trucks to get in front of me to get away so we can medevac Herma.
It takes a faith that surpasses trust to give into your training. When you're learning how to be a Marine, when you're being broken down and remade for that purpose, you see it in generalities. Maybe you'll be asked to take some vague future risk or make an indeterminate sacrifice for your fellow Marines. Without specific, those distant promises are easy to make. When you make them, they're not really connected to practical things. It is only when you have to deliver upon them that you find out whether you can keep that promise that you made. There is no more iconic scene in American military lore than ignoring enemy fire under command and sprinting out of cover. We can picture the rounds kicking up dirt at Cody Jones's feet because we've seen it so many times on film. But this is real, and even to hear him tell it, it is difficult to transport ourselves to a place where we, having run out into the open and felt enemy rounds in the air around us, give in to our training. Turn, kneel, and return fire with the full faith that following our training and trusting our equipment is the surest way to survive.
It took about 35-40 minutes, but during that whole 20-minute or so firefight, it felt like we were there for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, time just slows down, and it feels like, 1 second feels like it's 10 minutes.
As the trucks rolled past and he knew he'd be safe, Cody's act of faith had been justified. But of course, it had to be. No matter what way things turned out, the only way you can even begin to get through situations like this is to cling to the surety that training, repetition, and an honest and open commitment to duty is the only way through. In the end, whether you make it or not is secondary to the principle of behaving honorably, setting an example, and surrendering to your training. As the last truck passed and slowed so Cody could jump on, it still hadn't registered that he'd survived his first firefight only a few weeks into a tour during which he would see many and have more to overcome than just taking fire. There are few things as tedious as going to the doctor's office and hanging around just to get permission to get something you know will make your life better. Sure, sometimes you need to get something looked at, but if you know what the problem is, you're really just getting permission to solve it. This was the main problem the company Hims was trying to solve when they launched 4hims.com. The idea was to take common, easily diagnosed issues for men and take away the anxiety and tedium of going to the doctor. If there's a common problem and a well-known solution, why spend one day making an appointment, waiting for the appointment to arrive, just to spend another day to get a prescription to address it? More than 2/3 of men suffer hair loss by the time they're 35, and that number just goes up as you get older. ED starts to become an issue for 40% of men over 40, and that number just goes up as well. Both of these issues have scientific solutions, that is, medicine, not herbal solutions or any other kind of snake oil. But for a really long time, it was tough to get your hands on medical solutions. It isn't anymore. Two things have happened that have made the HIMSS solution possible. The first was that patents ran out on the formerly expensive drugs that addressed hair loss and ED. It made them affordable for people who really needed them. The second was a technological revolution that made telemedicine gain traction, letting doctors do some diagnoses remotely. It works like this. Go to 4hims.com and fill out a survey about your general health and your specific concerns. A U.S. board-licensed doctor reviews it and writes a prescription based on your personal requirements and needs. Then HIMSS fills the prescription and sends it along in discreet packaging. That's it. Check out the 4hims.com website to get a sense of the kind of company they really are. The site has plenty of lifestyle articles from men's writers, with insights on everything from cocktails to grooming. It's a great site to just go on and read, and it's a good central starting off point that gives you tips you can't find all in one place. Order now. My listeners get a trial month of HIMSS for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See the website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. Go to 4hims.com/thisiswar. That's FORHIMS.com/thisiswar. 4hims.com/thisiswar.
Hiring used to be hard. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy and you only have to go to one place to get it done. ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the world's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invite them to apply for your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so that you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. With results like that, it's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is the highest-rated hiring site in America. And right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. That's ZipRecruiter.com/THISISWAR. ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Cody and the rest of his unit weren't back at Camp Leatherneck for long before they returned to that village. During the post-encounter debrief and inventory check, the lieutenant's radio had turned up missing. Encrypted radios are critical to the U.S. military and highly valued by the Taliban. So, without rest, the Marines reloaded and returned to the house where the firefight had taken place to see if the radio could be retrieved. If it couldn't, the compromised encryption would have to be reset worldwide to prevent the Taliban intercepting radio communications among the U.S. military. So within only a few hours of having been attacked, the Marines once again found themselves at the door of the man with whom they had last spoken before Herma was shot.
Once we get there, the whole ground where we got into this firefight was covered in brass. Every round was picked up. There was nothing left. The Taliban picks up all the brass and spent rounds and cartridges and use them for fragmentation in IEDs. So they would put their explosives in the IEDs and put all the brass in any kind of metal they could find so that it gives it more fragmentation so they can wound or kill or injure more people. And about 20 minutes later, they'd come back to the truck and they're like, nope, the radio's gone. We don't know where it is, so we're going to have to push back.
Protocol might make you safer, but it doesn't necessarily make your life easier. That the radio was lost seemed as if it would have been a foregone conclusion long before the Marines headed back to find it. And knowing that the brass from the rounds they had spent might one day be returned as shrapnel from an IED only served as a reminder of their enemy's patience and resourcefulness. Still, you have to behave as if doing your job will pay off. After all, what alternative do you have? In this case, there was an indirect route between that firefight and intelligence that would yield something way more valuable to the Taliban than an encrypted American radio. The British SAS had been operating in the area, and they had a lead on a Taliban doctor and officer. After the firefight, word came that the two were hiding in a compound in the next village over. If anything requires faith in your training, it is clearing a possibly heavily guarded compound room by room.
When we get out of the truck, once we get there, we have security posted up on the outside and make sure no one's going to start shooting towards us while we're going in to kick the door in and go after this guy. So security set up, we're good. We push in to go into the house. We kick in the door. We clear that first room, and no one's there. And we start patrolling around and clearing room to room. And finally, we get to the third room we go in. There's a machine gun posted up facing towards the door. And we got lucky when we got there. The guy was asleep or something. He wasn't right behind the machine gun. So when that door kicked in, he started running towards the machine gun to start shooting at us. And that's when we unloaded on him and dropped him. And you just see blood and brain matter and everything everywhere. And then we go into the next room attached to that room, and there's the Taliban doctor. We put a blackout goggles and a hood over his face and flexi cuffs on him and get him out and load it up in the trucks and take him back. And then from there, we get him over to the HET team where they took over and they questioned him a little bit, and then they turned him over to the little prison they had set up on Leatherneck, where they would question him more and the MPs would question him before they shipped him out to Gitmo.
When the Marines kicked in the door and were staring down the barrel of that machine gun, that should have been it. What's more, if they had taken the extra second to marvel at their luck, it easily could have run out. If each second in a firefight felt like 10 minutes, how much longer did the heartbeat between recognizing that the gun wasn't manned and eliminating the person running toward it seem? But often success is within seconds or inches. Ignoring fear and doubt is the difference time and again, and it is the kind of thing that reinforces itself until what you think you should do and what your training says you should do are indistinguishable from one another. Still, to be clear, Cody was in his element. Each time he was in a firefight, he felt even more confident than the time before. After all, he had been preparing mentally for firefights for most of his life. For him, there were just two duties: keeping himself and his Marines alive and preparing for fatherhood. The second was the more difficult mountain to climb.
And for me, most of the time during downtime, it was either, okay, I'm asleep, or I'm in the little center where they had computers and phones hooked up, and I'm calling back to my wife or getting on the computer and Skyping her so I can talk to her and see her and find out how her and how the pregnancy's going and everything. So we had some downtime, but I mean, it was mainly, like I said, me just getting, if I wasn't asleep or we weren't doing anything, I was on the phone with my wife trying to get everything, making sure she's being taken care of and everything's going good with the pregnancy.
When he left 29 Palms on November 8th, Cody Jones had resigned himself to missing his son's birth. For him, it was just one small, unfortunate part of being a Marine, a tiny sacrifice compared with what he knew others had been asked to give. It just was something that he had learned to live with. Plus, the time was really passing for him. After all, the first few weeks of his deployment had been insanely busy and exhausting. But it was the satisfying kind of exhausting, knowing you have contributed something important and had been true both to yourself and to your training. But as it would turn out, Cody wouldn't even be in Afghanistan for the whole tour. In fact, his combat experience would extend to just a little more than 6 weeks in Afghanistan, and his final one would take place while he was a vehicle commander during what started out as a routine mail run.
Last patrol we did, we were getting ready to go. We just got a brand new truck because our old truck died after one of the firefights we got into. We leave Leatherneck with a bunch of mail and stuff. We get to PB Boldak, and they tell us when we get there, all right, you guys are going to have to go on patrol with this Air Force and Army unit and their Vic that's supposed to blow up IEDs before you get to them. So we had Vic 1 with the mine roller, and then these guys, and then my vehicle was Vic 3. Well, we're now on the main road because we're with this vehicle that's supposed to blow up IEDs before we get to them. Or we get out to this town, and there's 3 guys out along one of the walls of one of the buildings. And my turret gunner goes, "Hey, Jones, I got a bad feeling about this." It's like, "No, I hear you." I was like, "Something's up." And I was like, "Shit's fixing to get started and get popped off." So Vic 1 rolls past these 3 guys. Then this Army Air Force vehicle rolls past them, and then when my vehicle gets to them, next thing you know, it's just a loud boom. And I mean, for a split second, everything, all I see was black, and then next thing I know, our truck is being pivoted and pushed off the road, and we're falling down to the ground. When you have a 10,000-pound truck coming in the air and you feel it falling down the ground, I mean, there's only one logical explanation. You just hit something big, and it was an IED.
Okay, you're the vehicle commander and your truck was just blown up. You run down the response protocol from memory, check for casualties, and, if there are any, secure their safe, swift evacuation.
Saying, I look over at my driver and he's yelling IED, IED. I was like, Miles, calm down. You good? And he goes, yeah. And then I start checking all my guys in the back to make sure they're good. So I looked to the back and was like, hey, Doc, everyone good back there? And he goes, yeah, we're good. I made sure my turret gunner was good. And then my corpsman looks at me and goes, hey, Jones, are you good? I was like, yeah. And at the same time I'm saying, yeah, I start to look down and I see my right foot, my boot is facing straight ahead, and inside my boot I can see my heel poking out the left side of my boot at a 90-degree angle. And then I look over at my left leg and I go to try to move my ankle and my foot's just flopping, dangling. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I broke both my ankles, Doc.
When you both are the casualty and the commander, the responsibilities don't change a lot. Cody was conscious and the pain hadn't kicked in yet, so he made the most of his time by making a plan for executing his own extraction from the vehicle and then starting that plan's execution. Throughout, he focused on the protocols, what made sense, and, most important for him, what his junior Marines would take away from the experience. Marines prop one another up with a self-imposed responsibility to rise to the levels they've seen others rise to. Through the pain and even a little bit of fear, this is what Cody's focus was, rising to the levels that he expected of himself as a Marine.
So I had my turret gunner watch the side where the guys were at that building, because right to the right of us is just an open field. And I had my turret gunner, or my dismount, get out and grab the litter out of the side box and open up the litter and slide it in so that I could pull myself up and my dog could get me on the litter and start treating my wounds. And at the same time, I'm telling my turret gunner to pop red smoke, which means we got a casualty. And then he gets on the radio and starts talking to Vic 1, telling him what's going on. My doc's sitting there splitting me up, and I'm sitting here going, Doc, give me any painkillers, because at this point, adrenaline's wearing off and the pain's hitting me. And he goes, no, I can't. I don't want you to go in shock or this, that, and the other. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, all right, I trust you know what you're doing, man. I look up at my turret gunner. I was like, hey, Army, because his last name was Arnett, but we just called him Army. I was like, hey, Army, give me a cigarette. So he drops me a cigarette and a lighter. I light a cigarette, and Vic 1 backs up to our Vic so that we could just open the doors and have the doors open back to back to give somewhat of an armor shield as they transfer me from one Vic to the next. I get into the next Vic, and my section leader, Corona, was like, Jones, are you smoking a cigarette? I was like, yeah. He goes, put that shit out. I was like, bro, I just got blown up. Leave me alone.
They cleared a landing zone, and Cody was medevaced out. He got word to his wife that he was hurt but alive, and eventually surrendered to the morphine he was given before the first of what would turn out to be a litany of surgeries. When you're a Marine, you do what you have to do not because you don't have another choice, but because you made your choice when you were sworn in. You surrender to your training, and you live up to expectations and set examples for other Marines in a way that challenges them to rise above the bar you set. Then, you see if you can rise above theirs. But, as the ambulance pulled up to the plane that would take him home, all of the things he did and the examples he set came back to him in a way Cody never could have hoped or even expected.
My buddy Notard from Fast Company, he was there, and so was a bunch of other NCOs from Fast Company and from his platoon. Were all at the flight deck to meet me there, and they carried me from the ambulance onto the plane to send me back to the States, which was actually neat because everyone else there got walked on by regular nursing staff and stuff. So for me, it was something big, just kind of special. All right, I was able to be shipped off and sent home by my brothers.
As an extra piece of luck, Cody was able to choose between being shipped to Bethesda and being shipped to San Antonio. It couldn't have been an easier decision for him to make. He still had his legs and was in a massive amount of pain, but he would be stateside with Alexis soon enough, and he would be there when his son was born. But Cody Jones was on the verge of finding out just how much more pain he could take, and how much more he had left to lose, and what it would take to come back from everything that he had endured.
When I get my box from Dollar Shave Club each month, I'll admit I get a kick out of the little newsletter they include. Not just because of its fun casual tone, but it's also a reminder of how seriously these people take hygiene and grooming. We're in kind of a transition period where it's just easier for guys to get grooming products designed with them in mind. For example, I feel like Dollar Shave Club has scored big with their soaps because they don't leave you smelling all perfumey, and they rinse off clean and easy. The first time I tried the Amber Lavender soap, I worried because it came out a little fragrant, but once I left the shower, it was almost completely gone. I happen to prefer the liquid version, but Dollar Shave Club does sell it along with their mint cedarwood in bar form as well. In fact, if you ever shower or brush your teeth and try to make your hair presentable, Dollar Shave Club has a lot of stuff to help you out. And all of Dollar Shave Club's products are made with top-shelf ingredients that won't break your budget. You'll feel the difference. Plus, shipping is included with your membership. There's really no good reason not to get everything you need delivered to your door without a thought. The other thing is, before they ship you everything, they send you a little reminder email asking if there's anything you've forgotten or if you want to add something else in. It's a great way to keep from ever running out of the things that you come to rely upon once you join Dollar Shave Club. And here's a great way to try a bunch of Dollar Shave Club's products. For just $5, you can get their Daily Essentials Starter Kit. It comes with body cleanser, One Wipe Charlie's, their amazing butt wipes, their famous shave butter, and their best razor, the 6-blade Executive. Keep the blades coming for a few bucks more a month. Add in shampoo, toothpaste, or anything else you need for the bathroom. Check it all out at dollarshaveclub.com/thisiswar. That's dollarshaveclub.com/thisiswar.
When you're a Marine in combat, your need for planning is limited to an almost hour-by-hour strategy for staying safe and getting some sleep. Stateside, there are so many more options than that, even when you're wounded and in the hospital. Cody Jones was almost surprised about how good it felt to be back in Texas, even though it was just as wonderful as he had imagined it would be, except for the part where his legs were mangled. Still, his wife and folks made it there even before he did and were waiting for him when he awoke from his first procedure, which he underwent immediately upon arrival.
I mean, I was excited to see my wife that night. It was like a gift from heaven to be able to see my wife. And then me and her, that first night, me and her talking, and she's like, well, at least now you'll be able to see Aiden be born. And I was like, yep, I'll be able to see him. And I was like, which is nice because before it was, okay, I'm not going to be able to see my son be born, and now here I am, thanks to me getting blown up in Afghanistan, and now I'm going to be able to see my son be born.
There are different bacteria in the desert of Afghanistan than the American immune system is used to being exposed to. As a result, every few days during his recovery, Cody Jones was anesthetized for a process called a washout, where they cleaned and re-cleaned his wounds while he healed. It was a painful process nonetheless that was made all the easier to endure because he was reunited with his wife and soon enough would get to meet his son. But there were some pressing problems with his legs, and after multiple surgeries, it was clear that there were tough decisions ahead. There was a procedure whereby the shattered bones could be replaced with cadaver bones. Cody would be able to walk after rehab, but also would, without a doubt, suffer from arthritis. The other option was amputation. Cody didn't love the idea, but it was something that he had been prepared to hear since first waking up from the procedure.
So after he said all that, I was like, well, and the other thing he said was, and with the chronic pain, if you get chronic pain, there's a possibility of you coming back in a couple of years to have it amputated anyway. Well, at that point, I'm sitting here going, well, I was like, just take the leg, doc. I was like, with prosthetics, I'll be able to do everything I was able to do before. I mean, some things will change, but there ain't no point in me being in pain the rest of my life. Just take the leg. So about a week later, they did the amputation on my left leg. And then about 2 weeks after that was when I actually got discharged from the hospital. The day I was supposed to get discharged from the hospital was on January 29th, my birthday. But they didn't have a room at the Fisher House for me and my wife available that day. They weren't going to have it till the next day. So I got a day pass from the hospital, which basically gave me the ability to leave base, go out in town. As long I just had to be back in my hospital room by 10 o'clock that night. My parents, my sister, and my wife and me and my brother, we all leave to go breakfast. And where do we pull in? We pulled the IHOP, and I look at my wife and my mom, and I was like, oh, great. Take the one-legged man to IHOP for his birthday.
Cody was putting a good face on it, but he wasn't happy about losing his leg. How could he be? He was done being a Marine, which was pretty much the only thing he had ever thought of being. Cody had a young pregnant wife and would have to find a different way to care for his family that didn't include serving in the military. Worse, he would be stuck in San Antonio, doing rehabilitation for the foreseeable future as he was fitted for and had to learn to use his prosthetic.
So after I get out of the hospital, about a month after I got discharged on February 22nd of 2013, my son was born. And he was born 5 weeks early. So he was in NICU for a week. Me and my wife, that whole week he was in NICU. We went up there every day, every night, fed him, held him, changed him, did what we could, and then he finally came home.
Now, there was a new life to get used to, a domesticity that was so far removed from the day-to-day at Camp Leatherneck that it seemed to occur in a different universe. The couple were learning to be parents, and Cody was learning to cope with one missing leg and half a foot. It was a challenge. As a Marine, you learn to endure and to push through obstacles, or at least figure them out. But for Cody, there was more to it than that. There was the added challenge of being a new father that required a whole different approach to life. The Marines had found them an apartment where the little family could stay temporarily while Cody got settled into his new leg and continued rehabilitation. That way, the family was able to bond in private rather than in the shared house where many other of the Marine couples lived. And then, things really took a turn for the worse.
That night, she woke me up at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and she's like, hey, can you feed him? I'm tired. And I was like, yeah, I got him. So I made his bottle and everything, and then I brought it back to the room, and I laid down in the bed, and I was feeding him, and I fell asleep feeding him. And it was about 5:30, 6 o'clock where I woke up, and I was going, oh, shit, it's his next feeding, and he's not crying, and I thought he was in his bassinet, and then I woke up, and I looked over and saw that he was in my arms, and he wasn't breathing. And it was at that moment that I started doing CPR, like they showed us on the video we had to watch before we got discharged with him. And then I woke up my wife and, hey, babe, call 911. He's not breathing. I'm pretty sure he might have passed away already.
The next few hours were as horrible as Cody ever had experienced. Beyond losing their baby, an already unimaginable experience, Cody and Alexis endured questions from the police about his behavior since losing his leg. Questions about whether he suffered from PTSD and requests to go through the sequence of events just one more time. Cody says that, in retrospect, he understands that the police were following their own procedures and protocols, but in the moment it was really hard to take. Then again, there is no danger to you that makes any sense at all. No inconvenience like police questioning or even an amputation that matters compared with your child's life.
No, it was pretty close. Once we lost him, everything I went through just seemed like a paper cut and was absolutely nothing. Because the worst day of my life and the worst feeling of my life was that morning when I woke up to find he'd passed away. And once I woke up that morning, I found that Aiden passed away. That was the worst moment of my life. Prior to that, I was over everything with my leg. I had some moments and a few days before and afterwards where I was like, fuck, okay, now I'm missing a leg. What do I do? But it wasn't that bad. But it was at that moment that I woke up and he was gone that I was shit, this is nothing. I mean, I just lost my firstborn son. That hit me harder than anything in Afghanistan or with losing my leg.
When he was in Afghanistan, his faith in his training and his belief that bearing his burdens as an example to other Marines allowed Cody to serve in a way that made him proud to have been a Marine. At home, he had his own faith in God to lean upon, and the hope that, if he focused on being an example and striving to show that tragedy can be overcome, he might actually overcome it.
I know several guys who turned to alcohol, and I know myself, I could have easily turned to a bottle to self-medicate, but instead I didn't see a point in it. For me, it was, okay, it doesn't solve anything. There's nothing anyone can do at this moment. All I can do is just move forward and keep living my life and do what I want to do and set an example of how you can move forward even at the worst times in your life. Looking back now, I'm thankful in a way that I got blown up in Afghanistan and I'm where I'm at now, because I would have never even had those 6 weeks to hold him, to spend those moments with my wife of waking up in the middle of the night and changing diapers, because I at least had those 6 weeks to hold him and spend that time with him and have those memories with my wife, and no one and nothing can ever take those away from me.
Today, Cody and Alexis and their 3 sons live in Texas, where Cody works with his grandfather fixing tractors. He recently took in another Marine buddy who is having a hard time because even though he isn't combat ready, in the end, being a Marine is about so much more than combat. For Cody Jones, service means just that, living up to your own standards and then working hard. To be an example to others for sure, and his sons, of course, but most of all for himself, so that when he looks back on what he's done, what he has gained and what he has lost, he will respect the man he was, and hopefully, revere the man that he will become.
Next time on This Is War.
Like I start, with 50 cal, start throwing rounds down, and we get hit with like 3 or 4 more RPGs. I mean, we're just sitting there. We're setting ducks, just RPG after RPG. And I mean, these are bombs. Like, these are explosions going off. We're in an MRAP. Like, it's not that big of a vehicle. You could feel these explosions, obviously.
I'd like to recommend a podcast called War College, where I was recently a guest. I talked about the roots of the This Is War project and what I think it has to teach us. War College looks at conflict through the lens of history, technology, and geopolitics. The episode I was on was called Confronting the Realities of War. Check it out wherever you listen to podcasts.
Subscribe to This Is War on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening right now. If you're listening on an iPhone, just say, "Hey Siri, subscribe to This Is War." For show notes and more information, simply tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see offers from our sponsors. Please help support our shows by supporting them. Another way you can help support This Is War is by giving us a 5-star rating and review, or by following This Is War on social media. And be sure to tell your friends and show them how to subscribe. Are you a combat veteran, or do you know one with a story to tell? Reach out to us at stories@thisiswar.com with your dates and branch of service and a brief description of the story you'd like to share. I'm Anthony Russo. This Is War was produced by Incongruity Media. Executive producer Hernan Lopez for Wondery.